Sometimes you have to find your own path, carve a new one, and not follow the one that everybody else is following. And it's lonely. It's lonely. And so during all this chaos and turmoil, you're going to school and getting your degree.
Yeah, so actually, I even did that behind his back because I remember feeling, okay, should I go for my bachelor's degree? I did get my teaching's permit at a community college, and then after that, I wanted to get my bachelor's degree, which I wanted to become a social worker slash psychologist. So that's where I took my psychology classes in and social classes and stuff like that.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. And I'm excited because this is going to be a powerful episode today. And my guest today is Erica Ruiz. And Erica has a couple of books that she's written, children's books. And it caught my attention when I was at an event a couple of months ago. And the book that stood out was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's Why is Daddy in Prison and Why is Mommy in Jail? And that just tugged at my heart because there's so many families we're helping that are struggling with that right now. And then I started to see that you have a series of different books. And as I've started to dive deeper into your story, Erica, I've started to see that not only did you have challenges growing up, but also you're a survivor of domestic violence. And then, so this is going to be powerful for you women out there, but even you men that maybe are the aggressors. And, Erica's going to share her story of, what things look like and then how she was able to become go from a victim to a survivor. So, Erica, welcome to Fatherhood Voices. And just as you're watching this episode, if you are watching it on YouTube, go ahead and like or leave a comment. If you're watching it on Spotify or Apple Music, whatever platform you're watching it on, go ahead and give us a like or subscribe and even leave a comment and let us know that this is the content that you're looking for. But Erica, welcome. So what is your inspiration behind those books of inspiration and giving out knowledge to children as they're on their journey to becoming young adults?
Thank you, Edward. First of all, thank you for having me here. Um, Again, I checked out your platform and I think it's awesome what you're doing, spreading awareness on voices for fathers as well. Like I said, I advocate for mothers and, women most of all because I'm a woman myself and I feel like I can relate a lot better based on my experiences. So having like a strong-minded man that's able to like give voices to the men and allow them to um, be able to express as well and just helping them be better fathers. I think it's awesome. It's so needed. And to be honest with you, you're like the first person I've ever seen do something like this.
Wow.
So, so your platform caught my attention as well. Too. Yeah. So, yeah, well, first of all, my name is Erica Ruiz, and I'm an author, and I'm also a publisher, so I self-publish my own books. Um, So I guess I would say, like you mentioned, I've gone a lot through, growing up, childhood. I talk a lot of my life experiences, my challenges, pretty much on my platforms is what I use it for. A lot of times it's self-expression, but a lot of it is just, again, spreading the awareness. It did start off with just me sharing my experiences as a child, growing up without a father. Um, and then my teenage years, growing up very rebellious, being around gangs during the 80s and the 90s, and then followed by drug overdose. And then, went through my own trauma with DV and eventually becoming a published author. It sounds like so much.
No, that's powerful. So let me ask you a question. So your inspiration behind your books is your story. It's sharing your experiences. And when you were struggling with domestic violence or you're struggling with not having dad in your life, were there no books out there or anything that you could gravitate towards, or that your mom could point towards, that could help you with that?
Yeah, I just feel like that's one of my main purposes, that I feel like I publish on these strong topics because they are not books out there like these. And as a caregiver, and a teacher, I've searched for these type of books as well out in the libraries. I've sent my own parents to go look for these types of topics as well, and they're not found. So I was able to come up with this. Like you mentioned, the Daddy in Prison. I have it right here, and I named it "But Why Is Daddy in Prison?" because the kids are like, "But why?" I feel like kids are always asking, "But why? But why?" And so I was able to put this together and in a form of therapy. And one of the biggest feedbacks I get is that it was really, really animated in such a realistic way, but at a children's level, where they're able to really identify and relate to, for example, the visiting room. And like I said, I really wrote it in a form of therapy where they're also able to self-express. Like, I have a page here where they're able to talk about it, where it brings the communication with whoever they're living with, because sometimes they stay with the grandparents,
Yes.
the mom or the dad, vice versa. And then right here, they're able to glue the picture of
Mhm.
their daddy, for example, like the cartoon images here next to it. So it becomes personal. And a lot of the parents have told me that, they'll send me pictures of the kids with it. Sometimes they're reading it. So many emotions, some smile, some laugh, some cry, some tear. And I feel like it's just something that they can really relate to, and they don't feel so outcasted.
Wow. And so let's start with your story. So you said that you grew up without a dad. What did that look like, and what were the circumstances behind that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so we grew up with six of us total in the house, so six kids in the house. My mom, I would think I was like 9 years old when my dad left, between 8 and 9. Um, so it was just my mom pretty much raising us all. And it was a lot of commotion, just so much destruction, so much unbalance, so much screaming, so much yelling, so much anger is how I remember it, including myself. I just feel like I was angry for so long and for no reason, and I just couldn't figure out why. Um, I do remember when I really dig back to me being younger, like smaller, like probably like 5 years old. I do have some vivid memories of like me and my dad, and I do remember just feeling loved by him, being daddy's little girl. And when I was that young, I remember having a nickname. They used to call me Peshosha. So that really stick to me. And so when he was gone, it was kind of like a big change and a shift, but I don't think I really recognized it at the time. I didn't really realize it, like what was really going on, until later.
Wow. And so during that time, there were, like I said, a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles. But to you, that was normalized. That was just normal.
Yeah, it just became normal, and like I said, during my early 13s, 14, 15 years old, junior high years, um I started drinking. And I just feel like throughout the whole time I was just kind of, I was buzzing it throughout the whole time.
Wow.
um yeah.
And then, were there no family father figures in your life, an uncle, a grandfather, or?
No, none at all. And it's funny you're saying that, because even nowadays when I think about it, I'm like, we had like no family. Like, I just remember feeling like there was nobody. Like, after having full crowds of, like, Mexican parties in our yard, it just became silence, like nothing. Nobody was around, nobody really existed. It was just everybody was on their own, meaning like my brothers and sisters then were all on our own. Everybody grew up however they grew up. I myself feel like I had to pretty much raise myself, and learned a lot from people, out who I was hanging out with. And that's pretty much it.
Now, if you could go back during that time, 8, 9, 10, when your dad left, and what could you, now with your knowledge and then going to school and just, on the path that you're on, what do you think your mom could have done to have created a better experience for you to fill that void of a father?
Yeah, I think, again, I always like to say that we're just so born with a textbook, like I imagine it like we're thrown here on earth and you figure it out, like nobody knows what we're really doing here like
Mhm.
when we're born, you know what I mean? And I just feel like for a long time I was very angry at my mom because I did feel like I didn't have a mom, I didn't have a dad, and I just pretty much raised myself, at school, during like teacher parent conference meetings. I never attended that with anybody. It just didn't matter. And um and I feel my mom was so busy trying to hold the house down, and she was worried about the older brothers and sisters because they were already gang banging. So she wanted to make sure that nothing happened to them, you know? And I feel like, I guess what she could have done better if she had the power to have would be to just be there for me. I don't remember getting a hug from her on my young years ever, let alone been told I love you or I care for you. So it was more like I felt like a burden, like I was just kind of a nuisance, like a bother. Like, okay, go to school and do your thing and whatever, like figure it out. That's kind
So
of rough.
so with some kids, I dreaded, my mom going to the teacher conferences, and the back to
Mm,
school nights. But just for you, because you didn't have your dad in your life, and mine wasn't present, so I can relate. During my younger years, you would have preferred your mom showed up for you.
I
That would
think,
have made you feel.
yeah, sometimes I feel like, what if she would it have been different for me? Like would have it been better? And actually, I'm actually publishing a short version of my childhood years right now that I've been working on for like the past year. And on one of the paragraphs, I remembered writing, because once you start writing and publishing a book or even journaling, I feel like it opens up wounds, and
Mm,
because it's part of healing, it helps you heal because you're writing it on paper versus keeping it in the head. So you open up things that you even forgot about. And in one of the paragraphs I mentioned, I remember feeling like I wish I would have been adopted. like I remember feeling like I wish I could be adopted like by good parents. I wish I had good parents. And that's kind of sad when I think about it, and I picture myself as a child. It's really sad.
wow. And so, being a child that was sad, that didn't, your mom couldn't express emotion. She didn't tell you she loved you. She wasn't able to hold you and hug you and make you feel safe. Is that the right word? You didn't feel
Yeah,
safe. So is that what kind of started to, and then so then on the other spectrum, now you have your brothers that are probably going through the same thing, and now they ventured off into gangs,
right,
and then now your outlet now is at 13, you start drinking. So what
right.
did that look like? So how did that start?
Um, well, I guess just me watching. I've mentioned this before, like me seeing my older sisters pretty much like, you know, being dressed up like like cholas back in the days with their feathers. It just kind of encouraged me to want to be like them.
Mm,
So when I turned 13, I felt like I was grown enough like to like become that. But I wanted to be like better is what I would say. Like I wanted to be downer, you know? So I remember uh being at one of my cousin's house, and one of my uncles, they used to leave them all the time because they would go to like church stuff and things like that. but they would have like a whole case of like little vodkas and drinks on the shelf, like the adorno and stuff. So I remember we grabbed one of those, and that was the first time I actually got drunk. I was like,
Wow.
whoa. But I remember it allowed me to feel like I cried, and I was just feeling emotional, and I was like, wow, this feels so good right now. And then I just remember falling asleep, and that was it. But after the wrap,
Wow. And so then you started drinking. So that was your first experience,
yeah,
and then you continued on.
yeah, definitely. It was like the a lot of things that I can remember during my junior high years was just me being drunk all the time, ditching school, uh, grabbing my 40-ounce Mickey D's in the mornings. I wanted to make sure that I was intoxicated enough to, I guess, hang through the day.
Wow. And your mom never got wind of it? Did you ever
She,
get caught?
I guess probably within like the second year, third year, one of my sisters that was in high school used to hang out with the crowd. Well, used to hear things from the crowd that I was hanging out with at that
Mm.
time. And then she started telling my mom. And
Oh,
then when she told my mom got aggressive with me, and but it was just like aggressiveness, it didn't help. It
mm.
just, I think it just made the problem worse because I just didn't care. At that point, it didn't even matter to me no more. All I really cared about was that I felt so good getting drunk and that it was an escape for me, and that I felt tougher and I felt better and I was able to survive through that.
So there's parents out there right now that are struggling with their kids who are using alcohol or even drugs as a coping mechanism. So I know we're gonna dabble as it got a little bit worse, but do you think that your alcohol contributed to you now experimenting with that next phase of drugs?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Okay. And then at that time, you don't have a good relationship with your mom. You're just kind of doing your own thing. Is there anything that could have been done? And let me rephrase that. What can a parent do right now if their son or daughter is struggling with alcohol and they're at that age of junior high school, 12, 13, 14? How do you start to break that toxic cycle so it doesn't lead into the next layer, which is drugs?
Yeah, I guess I would say that if they're already drinking, there was already a disconnection, between the parent and the child already. So catching it at whatever time you're catching it that they're already drinking is just listen to your kids. I always like to just mention, listen to your kids. I think that as adults, sometimes we think that their level of pain is not pain because it doesn't relate to what we adults are going through, but it just devalues the pain of what the child is feeling. And so who else do they run to? Of course, they're gonna run to the streets. They're gonna run to people that are just gonna encourage them to do worse versus better because they don't even know what they're doing. So pay attention to your kids, and that's even if it just takes time for you to be present, and I know it's so hard as parents to be in the present moment because we have so much to deal with, like work, taking care of the household, and then still wanting to be a person. But just being in the present moment with your kids and paying attention to them really, really, like, it goes a long way in reality.
It's funny that you mentioned that because, you know, as parents, a lot of times we do devalue their emotions and their hurt and pain. But a big part of that too is as parents, we forget that they're kids and they don't have the wisdom or the amount of experience that we have. So a lot of times we dismiss it because yes, we've gone through it, but now we're in our adulthood, so we minimize it. And
Exactly.
we have to step back into, I always tell parents, you have to step back into your inner child and not look at it from a perspective of me as a parent, but think back to when you were 13. I use the example of my daughter that was um, didn't want to go to school. She didn't want to finish school anymore, and because she was getting anxiety and she was being picked on, and and I'm here as a parent telling her, you need to toughen up and you need to stick it out, and then projecting this onto her. And then when I started to think back of when I was going through that same situation at that age, how it was the end of the world. And we have to step back into our inner child as parents. We have to go back and not always parent from the mindset of a parent, but we have to step into our own little inner child and remember, because that bullying or that breakup
Yeah.
could be like the end of the world. It could be life or death, because we see kids that have committed suicide because of a breakup or because they felt like their problems just were too much to handle. And it just reminds me of, I live in Rancho, Cucamonga, and just in the last month, we've had two high school students that have committed suicide. And I don't know the context or the background behind the stories, but just to think that um, children, even in high school, that feel that it's so bad that you have to take your life means that we as parents, we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out because in your case, you started with alcohol, and even though your mom caught wind later on, and 3 years is a long fucking time. Okay, so you were self medicating for 3 years,
Yes.
and then she found out, and then it was just a bunch of wah wah wah, and
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, well, I'm already dismissing you. So how did that segue into drugs now? So now you're 15, 16. You've been, numbing yourself every day. And now the next layer of drugs. How does that come about?
Yeah. So by that time, I had already gone through so much. Like I had already been jumped. I've already been in so many fights. I felt like even stronger, more empowered to the point where like I just didn't care anymore. The times my mom did catch me drunk, she kicked my ass, and it got to the point where like she did it so many times that it just didn't matter no more, you know. Um, so after that, then I tried smoking weed. That was the next thing. It wasn't really my thing. I feel like the first time that I had smoked it, the first few times, I liked it because it made me feel just really good. Like I was just, a few times I was just like really laughing and just like living the moment with my friends. And that's all that mattered to me at that time. But then after that, then I did suffer an unexpected overdose, I would say, because I thought it was weed, but it was laced with PCP. And so that just like scrambled my whole life. It just took me to a whole different level of everything.
Wow. And when
Mhm.
that happened, did you stay in that addiction, or was that a wake up call for you?
It was a really big wake up call for me, Edward. It was a life and death experience for me. It affected me in a way that I never imagined. And again, I did publish a book about that one, and it's called My Story is Mine, A Look into My Past. In that one, I have talked about it with teenagers, and especially with the whole fentanyl thing going on right now. I do have a 15-year-old right now. Oh, he's 16. He just turned 16 this past month. And I talk to him a lot about this, and I've had him read my book a few times. And I tell him, look, not everything you try is going to give you the same reaction. And the doctor's not going to be able to save you all the time, because not even the doctors can bring you out of a coma all the time, and some people become vegetate in a vegetated state, and there's just no way out of that one. And for me, it was a huge wake up call. And like I said, um after everything that I have gone through and feeling tough and everything, that to me was like a big wow. Like I didn't know what the hell I was going through. I was like, am I dead or am I not? Because I just couldn't figure it out for a long time. And then it took me a while to just kind of come back to the world again because my mind was in a whole different place.
Wow. It reminds me of a story of a family that I met last year, and their daughter was in her late 20s. She was a registered nurse and had everything going for her. And she used to love going to the raves, the insomniac raves.
Mm-hmm.
And, she used to dabble with, different party, hallucinogenics, just to, enjoy the experience. And unfortunately, one time last year, she took something from someone and it was laced with fentanyl and something else, and it fried her brain. It
Yes.
fried her brain to the point that she never came back from it. So she went into a mental state of almost like a little child again, and she lost it all. And the way I came in contact with his family was because she stumbled onto my property after, I have some properties right by where Insomniac does these events, and she stumbled onto my property, and it was just like a little kid. And so finally we were able to get her parents' contact information, and we called and we said, hey, your daughter's here, and she's not okay. They says, no, unfortunately, her brain fried last year, so she's homeless, and we know she goes to these music festivals, but other than that, she just lives on the streets, and just,
Mm-hmm.
every couple of weeks we get a call, every couple months, either from the hospital, from police station, just to let her know, like, we have your daughter, but we've given up. There's nothing else we can do. Like, it was that one experience. There were multiple experiences, but it was just that one time where
Yeah.
she took something that just was laced with something, and it fried her. And it's so sad because to hear their story about how she had this amazing life, and all this stuff, and just in that 2 or 3 seconds, decision that was made to just try to find that little bit of a high to enjoy that music in the moment, it just turned her life inside out.
That's
And
so hard because I totally can feel that. Like, honestly, it scares me because when I went through it and I was going through it, I went through it for months. For months, I didn't think I was ever gonna come back to normal. Like, I would say that after that, I've never been exactly the same because I feel like I still suffer from things. There's times that sometimes I can still get flashbacks and I feel like I'm in that same moment all over again in like an adult person. And I just have to bring myself back and tell myself like I'm safe now. I'm not there anymore. But those experiences are life changing. There, it's nothing to joke with. And again, it just takes that one time to change your whole world around.
and this is a message to the kids out there, even people experimenting. And one is, I at least, definitely don't condone, experimenting with drugs and so forth. But if you're going to, if that's a choice you're going to make, whether it's marijuana or, well, whatever it is, make sure you get in for a reliable and trusted source. Because if not, you never know. And like I said, even to say what's a reliable and trusted
And,
source,
and even that,
so
you know how your body's gonna take it.
how your body's going to take it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you had this overdose, and then who found you, or how did that unravel?
So somehow I was able to make it to like the school nurse's office, and I just remember being in and out of reality. I was like, I remember feeling like you mentioned earlier, like that feeling of frying your brain. I literally could see my brain being fried, and I could feel it. And I just remember feeling like it was like an out of body experience to where I was detached from my body, and that's where I was trying to figure out whether I was alive or not. And I just remember, like I said, I was so in and out from reality and unreality that after that, I just don't remember what happened.
And then how did that look like when your mom found out?
I can't even like really explain it to you because I don't really remember every single detail. But I know that I remember I ended up telling my sister about it because I was so afraid of my mom knowing about it. Because, like I said, she had already like kicked my ass a few times for being so drunk. And like this one was like a whole different thing. This is where I was kind of like, Mom, please hear me out, understand me, but I couldn't even communicate that to her because I was so afraid of her at that time. And not only that, I just felt like nobody really cared about me anyways. So it didn't really matter, you know? My light turned off. Um so then that, and then after that I just remember missing school a lot, and then I remember being at the hospital, and then I remember at one point being admitted to like the psych ward because I wanted to like take myself out. My light's not gonna work. I wanted to like take myself out because of everything that I was feeling, but I couldn't understand that. It's like I didn't want to, but I wanted to because I couldn't stand that feeling anymore
Wow.
of what I was feeling, you know? So I was there, and I just remember seeing other worse, crazier people than what I felt like I was going through. And I just felt really scared. I was paranoid at that point.
And then so you come out of that and you start to put your life back together. And then how did you stumble into the relationship where domestic violence became
Yeah.
part of your life?
So then after some time of that recovery, because that took a while to recover, and then eventually, like, I remember sleeping a lot and then being on medication after that. As I started getting better, then I started going back to school very like slowly, slightly. And I remember just being back at school, and I remember this one teacher, I'll never forget her, like her face looking at me when I walked into the room, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, you're alive." And I was like, I
Wow.
was so weirded out, like, because of what I went through, but I was sober. I was like actually now sober. So I was present. And I was like, oh my God, I remember this teacher's face. Um, and so, you know, getting better, getting back to school, and just getting myself just, you know, back with my friends. And now I'm not ditching. Now I'm not tough girl no more. Now I'm not drinking. Now I'm not smoking. It was a whole different new life for me, you know? I was just appreciating the fact that I was alive, and that I was here on earth. After that, a little while after that, since I would take the bus home from my house, from school to my house, I would walk through, you know, my neighborhood block, and I ended up meeting um, a guy that was 10 years older than me, which I had already known him because I had grew up with his sister. So that's how it started, you know, like just talking a little bit. And then I remember the first time he gave me his number, and then I just kind of threw it away because before there was no cell phones. So he like gave me his number, you know, and I wrote it on my hand, and then I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. And then after a little while, um, I kept seeing him a lot often, like on the streets. And then we just started talking. And then and because he was older than me, you know, I just felt like, okay. And because before him too, I had dated an older guy, and I feel like that's where like the looking for daddy figure came in. And I didn't know that again until I went to school, and I was reading on the psychology books, and you know, the child development books, and everything that I read at school and learned made sense. And I was still in denial about it, but I was like, okay, but it's making sense, you know. And so he was older than me, so I felt comfort with him. I felt that I was taken care of. I felt like I was getting the attention I wanted, you know. um and so, you know, I gave in. I got attached to him, and then I got pregnant with him, and eventually I moved in with him. You know, I graduated high school. I was like, I couldn't believe I had graduated high school. I was like, oh my God, I actually did it. I was there with my cap and gown. I was like, are they really gonna call my name? Because I did the work, I was going to school day and night, and I actually really did it, and I passed, and I was like, wow. So that was that. And then I got pregnant, like I said, and then that's it. It was like everything passed by so fast. I wasn't even really able to recover the overdose thing, because I feel like I just fell right into a relationship right after. And then I just got pregnant, and then now I'm raising a whole family. Now I'm having to deal with being a mom myself, and I'm like, what the hell? What am I doing? And then, it wasn't bad all the time. It was really nice at first, you know. Like I said, I felt loved by a man and accepted, and I liked that. So after a little while, then I started noticing like red flags. I feel like once I got pregnant, like big enough, like fat, I started feeling like, oh my God, he's not paying attention to me. Maybe it's because I'm fat. But I didn't know it was just like, the time, I guess. Like sometimes you just lose interest with some certain people, like after a while. I guess. I think that's how I can mention it. And I would ask him, like, am I too fat? Am I like getting too old? Like that was my mind. I was just feeling like I wasn't good enough anymore. And because he was like the only like person now in my life at that point, um, I was attached.
And then just little by little, it just started, and then it just increased over time.
Yeah, so the first sign was that it's just like noticing like, okay, he's not paying attention to me as much. And then after I had my first child, I remember just him being very detached. I had to like take care of my kid, and I was just tired. I was exhausted, and I didn't have the help that I thought I was going to have from him. I really believe that he loved me and that he cared so much about me, because that's the way it felt at first, that he would be there for me to support me, but it wasn't like that. Then he started showing like signs of aggressiveness, and the first incident that happened was when I had my newborn baby in my hands. I was carrying him, and I just remember complaining, or at least he made it seem like I was complaining about something. I think it was because he wasn't helping me, and I was just frustrated. I felt alone. I felt like I had to deal with everything by myself, and he just was refusing to help me. And that was when he grabbed me with my son in my hands, and he shook me, and he's like, is this what you want? Is this what you fucking want? And then he just threw me on the bed with the baby. And I was like in shock. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, I couldn't believe that, because I had never been treated like that. Never. Like I said, like I never even had a father treated me like that. Like it just didn't make sense to me. And I felt like I just ignored the sign, because I felt like, okay, maybe it's a one time thing and he's not really like that. But then things kept getting worse and worse and worse throughout the years.
So how many years did you were you in this relationship?
I was on it for 23 years.
You went 23 years.
Yeah, and I was 17 when I met him. So he was my only one for a very long time, actually. And even till now I still struggle. I kind of feel like I snapped out of it, and I'm like 43, and I'm like, okay, like what now?
And what was finally, how did you finally get out after being in for 23 years? Like what finally was like, okay, enough's enough, Erica? Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, like after 16 years, I actually took a stand for myself, and I took a transformational training course. I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into. I had no idea. All I knew is like I was desperate for help. And I had started listening to like motivational things on YouTube, and I came across this one lady that would always talk so positive, and I was like, oh my God, like this, could this be real? Like, is there people that are really like this? It was so new to me, being positive, being outgoing, and it was new to me. and I was drawn to that. So I remember one time messaging her and asking her, "What is this program you're in? You know, like, what is it?" And then right away she was like, "Give me your number, let me call you." And I was like, "Okay." She was like on it, you know, and that was also new to me because, you know, people delay things, people like don't pay much mind to things. So I was like, okay, I gave her my number and we spoke on the phone. By that time, like I said, it was already 16 years. I really didn't have many friends. I dedicated myself, my life to my family only, my kids, you know, my man at the time. So it was just us for a long time. So nobody really knew about everything that was happening in my household because I kept it all to myself. And my kids were small, so they really didn't see anything yet until they started getting older. Um, but then this training, this lady was like, it's okay. Like she just, all the excuses I had for not going, she was like, okay, I'll help you pay for it. Okay, I'll pick you up. Okay. Like I had no excuse not to even go. So I was like, whoa, okay, do I really want this?
So you went to the training, and then now what are you learning?
So I learned that I can be myself, and oh my god, I remember being around so many positive people, Edward. Like I was like, I feel like I'm in high school again. I feel like, oh my god, like there's people that care for me. Like it was just so positive. And I learned that I didn't have to be there. I learned that I didn't have to be in that relationship. So it was the first time I verbally actually told them like, hey, it's not gonna work out. I can't be here with you. Like you're just not giving me what I need. You're very abusive to me. I didn't even like to use the word abuse or narcissist. I don't even like using those now. It just doesn't make me feel good, you know? But I remember telling him like I just don't, and then I remember him crying, and I had never seen this man cry, Edward. Like even at funerals for 16 years this man never cried. He was so tough. He was machista. Nothing hurt him. He was just like whatever. And the fact that he treated me so bad, I'm like, I thought you wanted this. I thought you didn't want this relationship. Like you don't care for me, you know? So but by then I was like, my mind was set. And that training was 3 full days. Like what I did in 3 full days was more than what I did in 10 years of therapy. I was like, wow, I really broke through, you know, and it took only 3 full days for me to be somewhere where I never expected to be at. And so I finally left him verbally, but it got worse. It wasn't the end. It got worse, and I didn't expect that. I thought that I was free, I can do what I want, and that's it. And it wasn't like that. He got more aggressive. He got more physical. Um, it became, he started stalking me, following me, you know, looking through my things because I still lived with him at the time. And then he didn't want to leave the house. So it was just kind of like by then, I just kind of stopped trying to do anything. It was more like, okay, you want to stay, stay. Okay, you want to do that, do it. Okay, that, because everything I wanted or asked for, it wasn't knocking sense into him. So I just kind of was like, okay, whatever, you know? Um, and then I ended up trying to move on. So I tried moving on. I started talking to a person that, you know, a guy. I started talking to a guy. He found out. I wasn't hiding it because at that point I'm just like, whatever. But I didn't know how much things were going to happen. And again, things got really worse. And then after that, I suffered a nervous breakdown because of the verbal abuse. Eventually, years passed during all this time and everything that had happened. I couldn't believe that years were passing us by and we were just arguing, fighting back and forth for years.
So I
Um,
think something powerful that you said was, and I just want to go back because you went through this transformational breakthrough over 3 days, and how important it is to find groups where women support women, men support men,
mhm.
because yes, you can sit here and talk to your friends, and then a lot of times it's just a lot of chisme going back and forth. Oh, fuck him, da da da. You know, but it's just gossip, so to say. But there's no action. Yeah, fucking leave him. Da da. Well, yeah, it's not that easy. Da da da. But you went to a group where you were able to see people taking action, women empowering each other. So that's a point I don't want to miss. That there are groups out there, there's organizations out there, and like I said, I'm a big proponent of motivational books and YouTube and inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
You can find that out there. You can anything you've ever wanted to know has been written, and you can find it in the library if you don't have the money to buy the book. But
Yeah.
that's powerful. But then once you had that breakthrough and you made that decision, I think the next big step to share with women that are struggling with this is get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Because otherwise they're going to wear you down. And men can be the victims of domestic violence too. So you need to get out. I know sometimes it doesn't make sense because of, finance. No, you need to get out because here's an example that you came in, you made the decision. No, I'm done. I'm worthy. I deserve more. But then you fell into that toxic cycle
Yeah.
because you're still living there. So it's important that once you make that decision, it's time to cut the ties. Yes, it's going to be a struggle, but there's organizations out there, there's family,
Mm-hmm.
friends, churches, something, but you need to get out of that toxic situation because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get better, it only gets worse.
It
Most of
does.
the time. There are some, you know, but so I didn't want to miss that. And of course,
Yeah.
when you add in another component, another man or woman into it, oh fuck, olvídate. Like
Yeah.
shit's gonna get the fan even more so.
Oh, yeah, and I had no idea about that because I really thought he just didn't love me anymore. Like he didn't care for me. I mean, I don't even know if he did or not, but like at that point he started making it seem like I was cheating on him when I had already caught him cheating before. Now I'm the center of cheating because I tried moving on and it was like endless. That's why I love what you do, Edward, honestly, because I feel like if we can save a family, that's amazing, right? Because I feel like families, like we want to, like I wish my mom and dad would have worked out, type of thing. Like I feel our kids always want our parents to work out, and I wish I could have worked out, like it would have worked out, but it's like there's not enough people are not aware of the things that we offer, like you, and like the transformational trainings. And like, what I do now is I have a platform called Healing Warriors where I support women, that have gone through DV, that have lost a loved one or whatever it is that they're going through. And that's why I do that type of work that I do now, because it was nothing like that back then, until I met that training. Then I was like, wow, there's something like that can help me.
No, that's powerful. And like I said, I commend you on the work that you're doing because more of this is needed because there's so many people struggling out there. And what I've come to find as I've been on this journey of not only healing myself and going through this transformation, but just realizing that a lot of these times that these men are broken and they don't know how to love. I didn't know how to love. I didn't know how to show up. I didn't know how to show up for my kids. I didn't know how to show up in a relationship because my inner child was damaged because of things that I saw because of traumatic experiences. And what we don't realize, a lot of us don't realize, is that it all starts with our childhood. And even then, it sometimes starts with our parents and our grandparents and our great great
Mhm.
grandparents because it's that ancestral lineage trauma that lingers from generation to generation. And if
Yes.
somebody doesn't take a stand and finally stand up and do the work, then guess what? You repeat the cycle. You fuck your kids up, you fuck your grandkids up, and then you fuck your great great grandkids up. And the cycle doesn't stop. The gang violence continues, the drug continues, being stuck in the system continues on public assistance, and it never stops because nobody wants to step up and break the fucking cycle to stop this. And it needs to stop. And sorry, I get very passionate about this, but we need to break that cycle because it's not easy. And you become the black sheep. You become the black sheep of the family because, oh, why aren't you participating in these gangs? Oh, do you think you're too good? Yeah, you can relate, huh? Oh, why are you not drinking with me? Oh, you te crees mucho or what? Fuck you.
Yes.
No, I want to be a better version. I don't want to participate. I choose not to participate in that anymore. And yeah, you become the outcast. You don't get invited to the parties anymore. You don't get invited out, but that's okay. Sometimes you have to find your own path, carve a new one, and
Mhm.
not follow the one that everybody else is following. And it's lonely. It's lonely.
It is.
You know.
It yeah.
No, and so during all this chaos and turmoil, you're going to school and getting your degree.
Yeah, so actually I even did that behind his back. Like,
Wow.
because I remember feeling like, okay, should I go for my bachelor's degree? I did get my teaching's permit at a community college, and then after that I wanted to get my bachelor's degree, which I wanted to become a social worker slash psychologist. So that's where I took my psychology classes in, and social classes and stuff like that. I did get my bachelor's degree. I remember asking him because I felt like I just had to, and I was like, do you think I should go for it? And he's like, well, if it's gonna get in the way of like us and you doing for us, then don't do it. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, like washing the dishes and cooking, like, can you help me? And it just didn't click because, again, he was raised with having a mother doing everything for him too, you know? So I feel at that time I was like, you know what? I did a lot of things that I was afraid of doing, but I kind of felt like I wanted to do them because it was in me, like it was who I am. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take this and go with it. And when he gets home from work, then I'll feed him and I'll do this. And I was just kind of like doing it. And when I was like done, I was like, hey, I got my bachelor's degree. And he's like, what? In 3 years? You've been doing all of this in 3 years? And I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm glad that I did it though. I'm so glad that I did it.
And now your journey's now starting the process of helping people to heal, and that's through your books and that's through
Yes.
your courses and so forth.
Yes.
No, that's beautiful. So what's the next? The next. Oh well, let me ask you a question. How's your relationship with your kids?
My relationship with my kids, since they were small, I've always communicated with them. I've given them what I didn't receive as a mom, I've given them love, communication. Um, my kids, I have the oldest one, he's 24 now. He's a Marine. He just got back about a year ago. And, I have a 16-year-old, the one that lives with me. Everybody, I feel like every family has its little ups and downs, but it's the consistency of reminding them that you love them and that you're there for them and that no matter what, they can come to you for help, because at the end of the day, the real support that you're going to get is the love of your mom, you know her advice and her being there. Like, she's never going to like fuck you over, is what I try and tell them, and I know it. I know that they feel it and they feel loved and all of that. I love the relationship I have with my kids, because even when I feel distant from my older one, because he's already married, he's 24, but even when I feel distant from him, um, he'll call me when he needs me, like he'll be like, "Mom," and I'll be like, "What, mijo? ¿Qué quieres?" Because I love my kids, like. I love them. They're a part of me, and that's something that I didn't see within my mom, is like the love and passion for me as her little girl, her daughter,
And how did you know to do that? Because
I
your mom
didn't.
didn't show up, you just did it.
I just did it because I was like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do whatever I want now. Like, I'm going to do what my heart's telling me to do. And I feel that me living that way has made me the person that I am today. For example, like even with my childcare kids, like I love those kids, because that's where they get the attention 24/7 from you as the caregiver when their parents are working, and they feel like they have somebody.
Wow. And then how's relationship with mom these days?
Now, like after within my nervous breakdown was when I got closer to her, because at the end of the day, the only one that was there was my mom. It's like everybody left me behind. I lost my business, so I had no money. So I felt like everybody was like, they just left me alone, and the only one that was there was, yeah, my son helped me. He didn't understand everything that I was going through, and that sucks because that's something that he also had to see, is his mom dealing with that depression because of what had happened within the family. But my mom was like my rock. Like she was there for me 24/7. And now I understand a lot of things from her that I didn't understand at one point. And I love my mom now. And you know, it's we've clashed for so long, you know, that now it's kind of like we can't live without each other. Like I call her and I'm like, Mom, I miss you. And she's like, I see. And I'm like, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've had these deep now conversations and started to clear the air and
Yeah.
and smooth things over. And it helps too when you've studied in that field, and then you can start to understand that a lot of times it's not just spewing a bunch of bullshit, but there's
Yeah.
actually trauma behind it. There's trauma behind how they were raised and how they grew up and how their parents a lot of times didn't show them love. So how can you expect a parent to show you love if they've never been shown love? And then
Exactly.
as kids, we have these expectations on how we want to be loved, how we want to be raised. But man, if they don't know how to do it, like it's almost like we're setting each other up for failure,
Yeah.
you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then what about your brothers and sisters during all this? Were they just not a part of your life and
They,
just
you know, they weren't. And it's so sad because I feel like they were going through their own stuff. You know, my older sister was going through her own thing. Like that was a whole other different thing because she was the first one. And then I have my other brother. It's like everybody was dealing, it has been dealing with their own stuff.
so how's your relationship with them these days?
At this point, like nobody talks to each other. And you know, it's really sad now as an adult. I tried reaching out to one of my older brothers that we really detached, and at some point I lived with him, but you know he refused to accept my apology, which I respect because at least I tried talking about it. But you know he's not ready, and some people won't understand, and that's okay, you know, because it's everybody's levels of like understanding that. To me, I feel like because I've gone through so much in my life and literally died twice and came back, I value and appreciate life like so much. Like all these little things that don't freaking matter, they don't mean anything. Like all these little fights and all these little, like, it means nothing because look, we're gonna die one day and we forget that we're dying. We're all dying. And at the end of the day, like that love that could be bonded together as a family is like that's what counts. Like you could have nothing, and but if you have your family's love, it's like that's the main thing for me.
Wow. I hope at some point in this lifetime you're able to start to heal the relationship with your family, your
Yeah.
siblings, because it sounds like you're on the right path. And through your journaling and through your meditation and things that you're doing, you're expressing your story and putting it out there so other people can not only learn how to cope, but have a better understanding and know that they're not alone in their struggles and their journey. Whether it's their mother, father that's in prison, or whether they're struggling with healing, or even
Mm-hmm.
drug abuse, or just in a bad relationship, and they're just looking for um, answers or a sign to just find that better place. You know. And as we start to close out, and thank you for sharing and being vulnerable because this has been such a powerful episode to just share your story and then how you've been able to now to capture it in this cartoon form for children to have a better understanding. What's next for Erica? What does the next 5, 10 years look like?
Well, right now I'm regrowing my daycare center. Like I said, I had lost it at one point when I was during the DV, you know, fights and everything. I don't know, episode, chapter of my book of my life. You
Mm,
know, that chapter's closed. So I reopened. I have one full year reopened. So hopefully I'm going to get back into a regular center where I'm able to expand and grow.
mm,
I am publishing with a licensed therapist a new book called Healing Betrayal Trauma. So stay tuned for that one. That one's going to be very powerful as well. Um, and continue, I would say, just me continue to be there for people that I can support and help and be there for, and just remind them that, you know what, we go through things in life, but we'll overcome it as long as we stay positive and do something about it, not stay stuck or like, stay in a position where like you're not willing to forgive or move past it. Like we could only talk so much about it, but putting action into it and really wanting to move from that, you'll move. Like eventually you will move forward.
Wow. And if people want to grab one of your books, how can they go about doing that?
They can go on my website on strongfamilybond.com.
Okay.
They can also go on my Etsy account. It's also Strong Family Bond. They can also inbox me. I'm very easy to find. So you can type in my name on Google and you can find me there. My IG is LA Warrior underscore E. My TikTok is also LA Warrior.
Wow. So strongfamilybond.com, or they can go to your Instagram or TikTok and so forth. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And man, what another powerful episode. And don't forget to like, comment on the episode. And yeah, if you want to introduce your children, maybe because they're struggling because their mom or dad are in prison, go ahead and pick up Erica's book. And you can go to strongfamilybond.com or even on her Instagram and social media pages and find her. Thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you, Edward.